Hey, what would you do if illegal immigrants were trying to break into your mom's house in the middle of the night? My rancher friend on the border tells me these are military-aged males coming across. I've seen them with my own eyes in the videos. They speak perfect English, some of them, and are stealing guns from border residents. Does that sound like an immigrant seeking asylum to you? No. One of those ranchers joins me today, and you will hear how his mom is doing. Today's podcast is sponsored by AMAC, the only conservative alternative to AARP. Join today at amac.us/Carter. Today, I will be joined by Kinney County Attorney Brent Smith. I met him out on the border last year, and now I'm a Texan, so he is a good friend. He is working to protect our border and his community, and he's going to talk to us about so much about what happened on his mom's ranch and so much more. He sees the open border every single day and has been one of the leading voices speaking out against what he says is an invasion of our country. I'll also cover how Russia has infiltrated our intelligence agencies. This is very, very important story, guys, and played a key role in the Trump-Russian collusion hoax, which consumed years of my life. And I am so glad it did because we exposed them. You are not going to believe this. Hey, everyone, please follow and subscribe. Get all the links at saraacarter.com. And while you're there, sign up for our email list so that you don't get shadow banned. Folks, we've got a new sponsor, Allegiance Gold. I'm so excited about it. Gold and silver. They allow you to protect what you have worked so hard for and give you back the control and privacy that you need. And because reputation is so very important, the only company I recommend is Allegiance Gold. Get $5,000 of free silver on qualifying purchase when you tell them that Sara sent you. That's SARA. My friends at Allegiance Gold can help protect your IRA and your 401k with physical gold and silver. Remember, get $5,000 of free silver on a qualifying purchase when you tell them Sara sent you. So don't wait. Call or click today. 877-702-7272. That's 877-702-7272. Sara. Listen to this. SARA. 877-702-SARA. Or go to protectwithsara.com. We can't control the Biden administration, but we can prepare. 877-702-7272. That's 877-702-SARA, SARA, or protectwithsara.com. Folks, it can't be any worse, but it is. And I told you this years ago. From the time John Solomon and I started breaking those stories in 2017, when I exposed Andy McCabe, the second in command at that point in time, at the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, which we should have respect for, but which has lost a lot of my respect, especially on the official levels, when we saw the corruption, such massive weaponization of our agencies, especially the Bureau, against then a duly elected president of these United States. Andy McCabe, James Comey. We even saw it with the DNI, the Director of National Intelligence. Remember that? James Clapper. And he was involved in leaking information to CNN, then going to work for CNN as a contributor. We saw the same mess with John Brennan. Now, here's the newest and latest. This is years later, right? We've exposed so many of them. Peter Strzok on the Russia investigation with Lisa Page. Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. Remember, they were having the affair, the lovebirds. And now we see that it wasn't just them. We knew so many people had been let go, but obviously not held to the account that I believe they needed to be held accountable for. But right now, retired top FBI counterintelligence agent who led Trump-Russia probe arrested for his own ties to a Russian oligarch. Let me put this into perspective for you. That Russian oligarch is Oleg Deripaska. He was a sanctioned Russian oligarch that was involved in this whole mess as well, right? We eventually find out that Danchenko, Oleg Deripaska, all of these players from Russia were also spewing lies about President Trump, under which Christopher Steele, who had the Steele dossier, was actually culminating those lies into a dossier that would eventually be leaked by our intelligence apparatus to our media and then put into full gear when Brennan, Comey, Clapper went to brief President Trump in January 2017 at Trump Tower about this really fake dossier. At the time, they pretended that it was possibly real. Oh, we've got this information. They didn't explain even to President Trump, of course not, because they were setting him up, how this all evolved and how they were using Christopher Steele and how Christopher Steele was spewing lies that the FBI, some at the highest levels, I believe, wanted to be out publicly about President Trump because they were working against a U.S. president, not against our adversaries. And once they briefed him on that, James Clapper walked all the way over to CNN, whispered in Jake Tapper's ear, "Hey, Jake, guess what I got for you? We just briefed the president on this dossier, and it's Christopher Steele's dossier, and it's about the president doing all these crazy things, even having this sexual escapade in Moscow where he has prostitutes peeing all over the bed that Michelle and Barack Obama stayed in, the same hotel room. And we've got all this information that he's working for the Russians." Well, guess what, folks? Charles McGonigal, the former special agent in charge of the FBI's counterintelligence division in New York City, he retired in 2018. He was just charged with violating U.S. sanctions by agreeing to provide services to none other than Oleg Deripaska, the sanctioned Russian oligarch. This guy was charged with going after Trump, and he's working with the Russians. Does anybody put this together? Are we putting all this together? Like, are we really seeing what's happening here? Remember a long time ago when everybody's writing books about Russiagate, about this, everybody thought they had the answers. No, they did not have the answers. I even said it then. You don't have the answers. We don't know how bad this is. Our agencies have been weaponized from the inside out. Our nation is infected. There is an infection in our nation. We've seen that across the board in our bureaucracy. And that's what we have to clean up. We have to disinfect it. These people need to come out. We need to shine a light on them all the way to the top, all the way to the top. I'm going to read you this little piece, and I think it's an important story. It's on Fox News. You can go to foxnews.com to read the story. You can also go to my website, saraacarter.com, and I want you to listen to this. He was charged alongside Sergei Shestakov, a former Soviet and Russian diplomat who later became a U.S. citizen and a Russian interpreter for the courts and government offices, of course, because that's what you want. That's what you want. You want that guy in your court and government offices. Through a 5-count indictment unsealed in Manhattan federal court Monday, McGonigal and Shestakov were both arrested Saturday. The indictment is a rare move by federal prosecutors to bring charges against a former senior FBI official that'll go before a grand jury. And I'm going to tell you this. This is important. Listen to this. This is the important part here. Though not referenced in or related to the indictment, listen to this. McGonigal, while serving as chief of cybercrime section at the FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C., was one of the first bureau officials to learn of allegations that George Papadopoulos, a campaign advisor for former President Donald Trump, boasted that he knew Russians had dirt on Hillary Clinton, launching an investigation into alleged Russian election interference known as Operation Crossfire Hurricane. Think about that. These people are corrupt to the bone. I loved President Trump. He was so angry when he saw this story. He even put on Truth, right? He put on Truth. Everybody go to Truth. He put right out there, he said, may this guy rot in hell. Because he went after President Trump. These people went after Trump. They went after his administration, consistently lied about him, saying that he was working with the Russians, saying that President Trump was somehow in the pocket of Russia, in Russia's pocket, that he was a Manchurian candidate when all along the Manchurian candidate was them. They were all working together, not only benefiting Russia, but benefiting themselves because they think they know better about who needs to be president than you do. They think that they need to control our political system. Just in case somebody like President Trump comes along, they need to shake that up and they need to get that person out of their system because the system is a parasite. It truly is it's a parasitic thing. It feeds off of us. It doesn't care that we're dying. It doesn't care that our nation is falling apart. It just continues to want to feed off of us. They do not want a vaccine for this. They do not want a vaccine for what has infected our nation. Why is McGonigal working for Oleg Deripaska? Why do we have people, and by the way, counterintelligence means he had to take polygraphs, or at least I would hope so, that he had to be polyed, that he was privy to all kinds of information, classified information, because the FBI doesn't work solely in itself in a little bubble. They deal with the CIA. They're dealing with partners overseas. They talk with MI6. They go overseas. MI5. They go overseas. They're doing work in countries all over the world. So here we have McGonigal taking a job with Oleg Deripaska, a Russian oligarch with very close ties to the Kremlin. Thank you very much. Exposed. They are exposed. FBI Director Christopher Wray, who, by the way, I personally can't stand, told Fox News Digital in a statement, the way we maintain the trust and confidence of the American people is through our work, showing when all the facts come out that we stuck to the process and we treated everyone equally, even when it is one of our own. The FBI will go to great lengths to investigate and hold accountable anyone who violates the law, including when the individual is an FBI employee. We hold ourselves to the highest standard, and our focus will remain on our mission and doing the right thing in the right way every time. Liar. Because Andy McCabe lied. He lied to the inspector general. He lied to everybody. James Comey was in on it. John Brennan was in on it. We had officials in on it. The DOJ was in on it. We saw corruption all around. And none of those people were held accountable. What about Peter Strzok and Lisa Page? What about, exposing our nation to compromise? What about the fact that they targeted a U.S. sitting president? What about the fact, Christopher Wray, that you even covered up for that? You know, the FBI, these are armed agents in a national force that in the very beginning, most people in America did not want to exist. They didn't want a national police force. I'm grateful for the men and women of the FBI, not for the leadership, for the ones that really do the job, the ones that really want to do the job. But let's just be honest. There is so much accumulated power. This guy, he was like working cyber crimes. Do you know how difficult it is? The kind of security that you need when you're working cyber and cyber crimes. You have to be trusted. And he went to go work for the Russians. Go figure. We'll see about holding everyone accountable. I haven't seen anybody held accountable yet. I know you're frustrated about that. I'm frustrated about that. I think the important thing is that we've exposed all of these parasites for who they are, and we just need to continue to keep exposing them because we do live in the greatest nation on planet Earth. I know sometimes it's hard. Sometimes we can have negative feelings about it, but we live in the greatest country on earth, and we need to protect it. And it takes every single one of us to do that. We're going to keep showing these criminals for who they are. McGonigal is going to go on trial. I also hope that they get him to the fullest extent of the law, that he serves time in prison. But we'll see about that. Hey, before I get to Brent, Brent Smith, the Kinney County attorney, my good friend, I want to tell you about MyPillow. MyPillow and Mike Lindell. You know how much I love American products. I love the fact that Mike Lindell's company is an American company and a great company. And you know, I tell you this on my podcast all the time, that I buy Mike Lindell's products for me, for my whole family. I absolutely love it. And even for my dogs, my little Macy Daisy, who's sleeping underneath my desk on a MyPillow pillow. And right now you can shop the New Year's specials at mypillow.com and use promo code Carter, that's CARTER, to get huge discounts on all MyPillow bedding products, including blankets, pillows, and comforters, and get the Giza Dream bed sheets for as low, listen to this, $29.98. You're just not going to beat it. You're not going to beat it. And while quantities last. So stock up now at mypillow.com. Use the promo code Carter, CARTER, for the New Year's specials. mypillow.com, promo code Carter. So happy to welcome my guest, Brent Smith from Kinney County. He's the Kinney County attorney here in Texas. And I was grateful enough to meet him when we covered a story last year, and we've stayed in touch. And I can't believe how much worse it's actually gotten on the border. But Brent, you've seen it with your own eyes. Your family's had a ranch there for a long time. So I'm glad you're here on the Sara Carter Show to tell your story.
Thanks, Sara. I'm glad to be here too.
Yeah, let's start out with what we were talking about. I mean, I opened this podcast just talking about the failure on the side of our federal government to protect our country, to protect our children, to protect our farmlands. And before we get into the legal side of things, of what's happening here in Texas with Operation Lone Star, with Governor Greg Abbott, who and others, the failure of the federal government is absolutely astonishing. It's like they don't even care about what's happening to your family's ranch on the border, let alone our children that are dying in our communities all across this nation.
Yeah, I mean, it's sad. How many deaths have we had from fentanyl overdoses or poisoning? It's over 100,000. And people up north are finally recognizing that the seriousness of not just the immigration issue, but fentanyl alone is a drug that's, I think Florida is designated as a drug of mass destruction. And there's so many elements coming through our border that not just the drugs, but the terrorists. There's so many side effects from having an open border that people don't realize how it affects every single policy that your government deals with. It's not just a secure border. It's property taxes. It's everything. Medicare. It affects every issue.
Yeah, that's right. And I want to talk about like on the ground, right? So I've been to Kinney County many times, and your family's been there for a long time. You've had ranch land there. I think how many, is it more than 100 years that your family's been here? It's
my ancestors were actually part of the old 300, which is Austin's first colony in Texas in 1829. So that's
just amazing.
Before Texas was there even a republic, we were here. As far as ranching goes, we were here, I think, in Kinney County in 1880s or 1850s. We were in Kinney County, I know. So we've been here a long time.
That's pretty. So you've been here a long time. Tell everyone that's listening right now what you sent me. I mean, you said like every once in a while I'll get great video from you, what's happening on your ranch, the people that are crossing. Have you or your family ever seen it this bad?
No, we have never seen it this bad. And it's not only the numbers that have increased, it's the type of illegal aliens coming across. They're military-aged males in military clothing, operating like a military. They're evading law enforcement. They're walking on foot more than 60 miles into the state of Texas to get a ride somewhere. Why would they be walking over 60 miles if they were just here for a better life? There's a reason they do not want to get caught. And that's what worries me is the gotaways. And the federal government's reporting of known gotaways, that people need to realize that's known gotaways, what they've actually seen. That doesn't include the thousands upon thousands or probably millions of people they don't see and they aren't accounted for in their stats.
I know that's what blows my mind. And I want people to understand that are listening right now. When you're listening to Brent, I want you to describe, Brent, what the video that you sent me. And I've seen this before. I mean, this is most recent. You just had an incident last night. Describe the people in those videos to our audience, because I think that when you describe it and describe what they're doing, I think it's going to really hit home. People are going to say, well, this isn't just, like you said, an innocent family or somebody looking for a better economic opportunity or something. These are people that are evading law enforcement, and there's a reason why.
Yeah, the video you're talking about is of a ranch owner that is in the north part of Kinney County, and it has a video of several illegal aliens, males, kicking in her door to the house. She wasn't in the house at the time, but she actually had a video recording of a camera there on that house while they kicked in the door. She had to spend almost $14,000 reinforcing her door with a steel frame, steel door, and windows as well, because that wasn't the first time her house had gotten broken into. And so when you don't feel safe at night, it does something to you. When you're inside your own home and you have to worry about people breaking in the middle of the night, that is not safety and security the government needs to protect its citizens with. Just
Right.
last night, I was telling you, I live in a house that's right next to my parents on the ranch. It's almost like a homestead, or kind of a small community. But my mom called and said, hey, there's someone outside my window door knocking on the window trying to access the house. So I grabbed my AR-15, go outside, and there's an illegal alien at the house trying to knock on the windows. I had to detain him until law enforcement arrived. And he was, spoke perfect English from Guatemala. So that tells me he's been in the United States before. He was removed for whatever reason, and now he's trying to come back again. And that's every day on the border. And as far as the video goes, what makes that video unique is that happens every single day on the border. But most ranchers don't put up video cameras on their houses or hunting lodges because we've never had to do that.
Right.
This one ranch owner did, though, because of the issues. And so everyone got to see it for themselves, what happens every single day.
Yeah, what was so fascinating to me about the video was how there were two guys hiding around the corner of the home. There were two in front of the door. They weren't acting hungry. They weren't acting injured. They didn't seem to have, they had their backpacks on their backs. They looked strong. They were fighting aged males. That's what they look like, military age. And they were strong guys, and they were just pummeling her door with his foot. He was kicking it as hard as he could. So imagine being a woman in your home, if she would have been home alone, seeing four men, on your property, kicking in your door. It's got to be horrifying. And other family members that I've talked to, even up in Alpine, and I've said this story before, but she said her daughter was outside on a trampoline on their ranch in Alpine, jumping up and down on the trampoline. She could hear her laughing and, playing. And then all of a sudden it was completely quiet. And she thought, what's going on outside? So she walked outside to see her daughter, and there were men surrounding the trampoline that had been lost in Alpine, were walking through her ranch land, to try to evade law enforcement, because these are the bad guys. So now let's get to the crux of the matter, because you're not only a rancher and a great son. It appears your mom's very lucky and your parents to have you there, but you're also a lawyer, and you are, you're an expert in this field too, because you've had to be, in Kinney County because of the effects of immigration on your own community. Let's talk a little bit about this. What we're hearing a lot now is people here are saying, let's just call it an invasion. I hear it all the time. Let's just use the law so that we can protect our state. If the federal government isn't going to do it, we're going to do it. What does that mean if somebody calls this, with what we're seeing at the border, an invasion? And can you, when the federal government is making it an invasion? So it's almost like you're battling the feds too.
Right. And, the founders of the Constitution were very intelligent men. They set up, the first thing we have to discuss is Article 4 of the Constitution guarantees each state to be free from invasion, and also to ensure a Republican form of government. But for our conversation here, it's free from invasion. That's the federal government's responsibility. It's not condition. It's a guarantee in the Constitutions in Article 4. So they put that in there. But then under Article 1, subsequent to that, they said the states cannot militarize and take military action unless there is an invasion or an imminent threat of harm. It's kind of like they put in a break the glass in case of emergency provision. If Article 4 is not honored,
That's a good way.
Article 1 kicks in. And so that's where that comes into play. And Ken Cuccinelli has done a great job briefing that and explaining, to the public what that means. And so what that means for us as the state of Texas or Arizona is the governor is the commander in chief. He is the one that determines, is this an invasion? And so the crux of the issue is, what is an invasion? You can go back to James Madison, who wrote the Constitution, and he actually explained it as Georgia at the time was almost the frontier. He explained to Georgia that they could use the invasion clause to protect their state from smugglers back then, from smugglers. And so that's one precedent. The next precedent we fast forward in history is Sam Houston, who was a former president of Texas and also the governor. While he was the governor, he did the same thing for Indian depredations and Mexican bandits. So the precedent's there. It just hasn't happened. It hasn't needed to happen in a long time.
Yeah, and I've got that because so everybody is listening. Brent and I were discussing this on text messages, and I said, "Hey, Brent, if you get a chance, will you send me the documents or whatever you got that shows that Sam Houston had actually done this, had actually said this was an invasion?" And it's in this old book that actually I think you guys were able to locate these, and it's incredible. It's the Texas Rangers, right? It was about the Texas Rangers, and it was in that chapter. And if you don't mind, I'll read it. It says, basically, he declared, which is Sam Houston, Texas is ready for the emergency and will act at a moment's warning. Texas needs to repel invasion, both from the Indians and Mexico, an immediate supply of arms. So even back then, and Sam Houston, by the way, so everybody knows, because Ed Hindy and his wife, Nina, they always tell me they've got the Sam Houston Award, and Nina's a historian, so I can't even walk in her shoes. I don't know even a smidgen about Sam Houston that she knows. But I remember her saying, and Sam Houston was this really empathetic guy, even though, and he declared this an invasion, but people were always saying, oh, Sam Houston's too soft on people. He's too soft on, on the natives. He's too soft on what's happening with Mexico. But Sam Houston declared it an invasion at that time. And it's far worse now.
Right.
Than it was then.
What you quoted was a letter he sent to the Secretary of War, Floyd, in 1860, basically requesting them to send more arms for the Texas Rangers. But, he wasn't stopping at that. If we didn't get the arms, he had a finance deal set up with London to get the money to buy the necessary arms to deploy over 5,000 Texas Rangers along the border. And so he took steps, and he recognized it as his duty to repel an invasion, not, an option. And so the Texas Constitution also, I haven't gone to this part, but the Texas Constitution also authorizes the governor to repel an invasion. So you have two constitutions that authorize the governor to take these actions. And quite frankly, Sarah, the ranchers and Texans that I speak to, they recognize that Joe Biden caused this crisis. But they're at the point, they realize Biden is not going to fix this. So now they're turning to the governor saying, at some point, Governor, you have to fix this. If you let this continue, at what point are you complicit in this? And they're getting frustrated, as am I.
Yeah, I've been hearing that a lot. There is a lot of frustration on the side of Governor Greg Abbott. You'll hear people say, look, he has Operation Lone Star in effect. He's put DPS on the front lines. He can't do anything about what's going on with the Border Patrol. Border Patrol agents are telling me their hands are tied, that the president, like you said, will not allow them to do their job. I mean, it's so bad that the morale is so low, and that Border Patrol agents are leaving. They're literally leaving in droves. People are retiring on the job. They're not patrolling. They feel like they're just nothing. I mean, this is really a huge national crisis that is not being covered the right way because, like you, Brent, I think what happens is people are just seeing the numbers, right? They see people walking across the border, turning themselves in. I've covered the children and the women issue and the humanitarian crisis. But like you said, There are people walking on our farmlands and around in our counties here in Texas, and they are trying to evade law enforcement and try to bypass those Border Patrol checkpoints because they mean to do harm to our nation. Everybody asks me.
A good
Go
example, and one thing that we haven't got to in this conversation, but it's crucial, are the cartels. The cartels
Right.
have operational control of both sides. And when we talk about this issue, especially with Article 1 and the invasion issue, Article 1 has nothing at all to do with immigration. It has everything to do with securing the border and providing safety and security for Texans and the United States. So people often get this confused as Article 1, it has something to do with immigration. It doesn't. It's safety and security of the border. And I'm a little behind on sending you pictures, but just last week, I don't know if you know, there was a house in Kinney County that was vandalized and burglarized by a group of illegal aliens, single adult men. Guess what they took? They took a AR-15, over 300 rounds of ammunition, and 8 knives.
Oh.
They were apprehended, and all this weapons and firearms and ammunition were found on them. So you tell me that those people are looking for a better life when they're stealing weapons. That's what they were stealing. So this is not a humanitarian issue. Well, it is to some degree, but the other side of this, it's a cartel and violence and death issue. And that's where Article 1 kicks in.
That's so important. And when I talk about a humanitarian issue, and I think most of the audience knows what I'm talking about here, I'm talking about the fact that our own administration is creating a humanitarian issue. We're not seeing people fleeing a war zone coming into our country. It's not like Guatemala and Nicaragua are having a war or at war with anyone. It's not like we are literally creating the humanitarian crisis by empowering the cartels and the human traffickers. So it's almost complete insanity. It's like a purposeful chaos that I've never witnessed before. And when you talk about them taking the AR-15s, think about that. I mean, if they would have made their way out of the county, if they would have entered into a vehicle, God only knows what they would have done with that. We don't even know half the time all the bodies that you all find on the ranches. It's now become, but the UN has now declared the Mexico-U.S. border crossing the most dangerous land crossing in the world.
Yeah.
So what can Governor Abbott do? Let's say that it's called an invasion. Let's say he can declare an invasion. What does he do with that? How does that solve this problem?
Well, when he declares an invasion and he invokes that authority and also takes steps to repel anyone trying to come across and secure the border, what that does is messaging. It sends out a message to the thousands upon thousands attempting to come, thinking it's an open border. And you've been down there, messaging is everything. If they're told it's open, they're coming. If they're told you can no longer enter the border because the governor of Texas has closed it, they're not coming. And right now, it's open, and they know it's open. The governor, in my opinion, the governor would only have to secure and hold the border for probably a month, and it would solve the crisis. The caravans would stop because they now know it's no longer open. Now, granted, if Arizona and California is still open, they'll probably still go there, but they won't come to Texas. And so what the governor would have to do is set up a boundary at the river, and it would require probably coordination from other states like Georgia, Arkansas, all the other states that also send their National Guard for support, because Texas has a large border. And they have to have a military presence or law enforcement presence on the border that requires everyone to go through a port of entry. He's not stopping immigration. Well, if he did this, he wouldn't be stopping immigration. He would be stopping the illegal immigration coming across, and it would basically make the cartels powerless because that's how they have their money and operations. They don't send, the vast majority of their supplies through the port of entries. It comes between the port of entries. Once that occurs,
that's absolutely true.
It'll shut down the cartels issue. And the other thing he needs to do is shut down the ports of entry with Mexico and tell Mexico, until you do your part and secure your own side of the border, we will cut off all legitimate funding that you get through commerce. And because Mexico gets money from the cartels, that's a fact. If you make
100%.
If you make more economic harm from their legitimate commerce they don't receive because the ports are closed, then they'll do something. That they receive more money, that the government does, from the port of entries, the legitimate commerce, than they do from cartels. There's no question about that. But they're almost like,
but you'll see. You think the business community will go up in arms if you try to do that? I mean, because you know how they operate here on our side of the border, because it's almost like their own cartel. They're going to be furious. But I agree with you. There has to be some kind of, we have to work together. We have to treat our neighbors to the south as equals. And say, hey, you want legitimate business in the United States? I believe that. We're going to work together. And that's going to require you to do your job. Because I think that is one thing that we are not doing. We are not asking our business leaders, to do their part. Okay, so you guys want better immigration reform. You want to bring more people here legally on worker visas. Great. We can deal with that later. Let's just secure the border and then get to the supply and demand and working with our neighbors. But you said something really important, Brent. You said both sides of the border, because that I do agree with you. You're not going to have hundreds of billions of dollars that these cartels are making and tell me that they've only bought people on the south side of the border. That money has to go both ways.
Right. No, and the cartels have infiltrated the United States. I guarantee you, they're all over the United States. I mean, that's
right.
A fact at this point.
So invasion doesn't mean we're going to send an army to invade Mexico, right? It doesn't mean we're going to shoot innocent children standing at the border. We're just going to stop people from entering.
Right. It's
through and divert them. Say, okay, you want to come in? Go through to a port of entry. There it is.
We're going to secure the border. That all it is securing the border. If it means making people go through the port of entry, then so be it. If it means not allowing cartels to operate on the border, then so be it. That's what it's not only going to be the people going to the port of entries. It's also going to be rooting out the cartels that are infiltrated all along our border on both sides. That's the main thing, is the cartels as well. There's several aspects of this. One of them are the people. The other is the cartels. And then with the cartels, you have the drugs and the crime and the violence that goes with it.
And the death of all of our children. So many American children have died. And our adversaries like China and others taking advantage of these cartels and using them as proxies to target the United States. And I call it an asymmetrical war, or, a proxy war against us. Irregular warfare, whatever anybody wants to use. I see that happening in the United States. What is Governor Abbott? Have you heard a response from his office? Is there any indication or inkling that this is a possibility, that this could actually go into effect, that he would do something?
I have not heard anything from Governor Abbott's office. Of course, he doesn't really brief me on things, but I haven't heard anything. I think he realizes the problem. And I think if I was him in his shoes, his possible solutions are dwindling down. I don't think, he sees what solutions are left. There's really only one, or there's two solutions left. He can secure the border, or Biden. There's two people that can solve this. It's Governor Abbott or President Biden. And I think anyone who's waiting on President Biden to solve this that's just foolish at this point. He will not solve this. From day one, he wanted open borders. Why would he all of a sudden change that? I think Biden will likely put in some policies to dress it up better. But if even though you repaint the barn, if the barn doors are still open, it doesn't matter what it looks like. It's what the numbers are, and the numbers tell the truth.
Yeah, and those numbers are just increasing every single day, Brent. And when you were talking about putting the National Guard, because we already have National Guard here in Texas, and I've shown this on Sean Hannity's show. I've been down there when it happens. I think it was even the trip that I took where I met you, but I was standing, and I believe it was near Roma, Texas. And I remember at one point with the guard, and I remember being along the river and watching as the smugglers loaded up boats, rafts of people, children, women, men, whatever, and they walked all across the water. They guided the boat over the raft, and they looked at our National Guardsmen, and it was a gal and a guy standing there, and he said, "Don't damage my raft," in Spanish. "Don't touch it. I've got other loads of people that are coming across and they had to help. So our National Guard was literally helping people get out of the boat and come into America. So they were like the welcoming party. They were and it wasn't their fault. That was what they were ordered to do.
Yeah.
They are ordered to guide. Yeah, I was down there with Senator Blackburn. She saw the same thing. Just a few weeks ago, I was with Senator Blackburn, Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith. We were on Codell there, as well as Senator Britt from Alabama. We're all standing on the border there in, I believe it was Eagle Pass. And we watched as the National Guard had to literally guide entire groups. They were on their boats, but guide them to the area where they could walk because they had been told that their job was to ensure that nobody would drown. And there were children there, but they guided them to an area where they could walk across the river. And it's sad, actually. It's very sad, right? Because I love our military. I know that our men and women in the military, that's not what they want to do. They don't want to be guiding people across into our country, but they were embarrassed. They were embarrassed and they didn't want me there. They didn't want us seeing that. I mean, they had no other choice, but they didn't want us seeing that. They were like, okay, you guys are done now, right? You can get out of here. I'm like, no, it's a public park. We can stay here as long as we want. We're going to watch this.
That just makes me angry because we're actually paying tax dollars for them to do that. We're paying for them to allow people into our country illegally. And that's just, that's what makes people mad.
What's worse, it's like what you said. It's not just the innocent people. We're literally paying to allow the cartels to continue to poison and kill our children.
Right. And, there's more deaths have happened from fentanyl than the Vietnam War. Like when you're talking about the asymmetrical warfare, more people have been killed in the U.S. than the Vietnam War. That establishes this isn't just a small issue. This is more deaths have occurred than we had a war in Vietnam. That's crazy.
It's crazy. More than the 20 years in Afghanistan, more than what we saw combined between Iraq and Afghanistan.
A rancher told me the other day, and it sums it up, is, this might not be, we might not have bullets and guns pointed at us every day, but it sure feels like a war zone. And I couldn't say it any better than that. There might not be bullets and guns every single day, but this is a war zone. And people are dying just like in a war. It's just a different type of war at this point.
What can the American people do? What can we do here in the state of Texas? What can Americans do in border communities? And I would say, throughout our country.
Well,
what can we do?
That's a good question. One, we can contact the federal government, which we all know what's going to happen there. We can contact the governor. And in fact, our sheriff last week mailed out a letter to 40 different counties in Texas requesting law enforcement aid. And because, counties have a lot of power. They don't have a power to close.
Yeah, your resources.
Right.
What about your resources in Kinney? Do you have enough?
No, not anywhere close. Not anywhere close. But I think a lot of counties can see now that what gets past us in Kinney County is coming to them. And, these 40 counties that he mailed the letter to are ones that have declared an invasion on the southern border. So they recognize the problem. So our sheriff sent out this letter to them stating, you obviously recognize the issue. Please send law enforcement assistance to Kinney County under my authority, and we'll try to do what we can to curb this crisis. And that letter went out last week. And so we're trying to figure out a way to coordinate housing, coordinate, everything else that goes along with that in Kinney County. And it will be interesting to see where it goes. But that's not going to solve the issue. It's not going to solve the crisis. But it's a step in the right direction. It might put pressure on the governor to do more. That's what we're hoping.
And that's it. I mean, it's I'll reach out to the governor's office. I'll talk to him. I'll see what's going on over there, Brent. And I'm going to bring you back on the show to talk about this. I think this is such an important issue. And what I'm trying to do is get the audience to hear straight from the people that are being directly affected by this, not by politicians who are in Washington, D.C., who have no idea what's really going on or who live in glass houses. You know what I mean? And they don't even know what the extent of what's happening to people on the ground. But we really are living in very dangerous times. I believe we have given up our national security to cartels, to terrorists, to the worst of the human beings on planet Earth, these cartel leaders and human smugglers that are decimating children and women and people they're trafficking into our country. I mean, we're the land of the free, supposedly the home of the brave. Why are we allowing people to traffic human beings into our country and create a whole underground market of slavery?
Right.
I don't understand it.
And in my view, this comes down to one situation. The governor has a choice. He has a path in front of him. He has to make a decision which way he's going to walk. He can either follow Sam Houston and his precedent that he did in securing the border, or continue the same path he's on. But Texas cannot sustain 2 more years of this. I'm going to state that as a fact. If we don't change the path we're currently on and securing our border, Texas will not look like the Texas you and I have grown up with. And if Texas falls, so does the rest of the country, I believe.
I couldn't have said it better. 100%. I'm in total agreement with you on that, Brent. And I hope that the governor is listening to this. Governor Abbott, if you're listening, you need to talk to Brent. You need to talk to all these folks that are down there feeling this every day. I know the governor understands this, but you really need to start listening to what solutions can really work here in the state of Texas. Thank you so much for being on the Sara Carter Show. I'm bringing you back. Folks, if you enjoyed today's interview, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. It really does help our show grow. Thank you so much, and God bless. Okay, this story by Ben Wilson is awesome. He's with the Washington Free Beacon. I think this is so. Border agents right now, we talk a lot about smuggling, the very serious issues, right? But right now, believe it or not, border agents are facing an influx of smuggled huevos. And the prices are skyrocketing. I mean, they're smuggled. Yeah, no, okay, huevos. Don't be thinking in that direction, folks. We are thinking this is smuggled eggs. They're smuggling eggs into our country because our eggs, thank you, Joe Biden, are way too expensive. But I want you to think about this. Let me read the top of the story because it is a serious issue. I mean, contraband is a huge issue. We think of fentanyl and everything else, but this becomes a problem for our farmers and our ranchers and, huevos just being smuggled all over the place. But this is the top of the story. Border agents are scrambling to address a new problem coming into the country. Eggs smuggled as contraband. Between November 1st and January 17th, U.S. Customs and Border Protection officers recorded more than 2,000 interactions with people attempting to smuggle eggs into the country. I keep wanting to say huevos, into the country in 4 cities. For all of you out there who don't speak Spanish, that is eggs in Spanish, and it could be used in other derogatory terms, including San Diego, California, and El Paso, Texas. The same period as last year just saw 460 encounters. So huge increase, right? Huge increase. Influx of egg smuggling comes as food prices rose 60% in 2022. Think about that. That is not funny. That's actually really tough. I know. I go to the grocery store. I actually go to the grocery store. I know how much it costs, and I'm always stunned. I'm like, how did we pay that much for eggs? And forget it if you want to be like, oh, I'm going to buy the extra large brown eggs, and make sure it's all healthy and organic. Then you're going to be paying it's like literally a fortune. So I'm like, kids, everybody suffer. We're getting the little tiny white eggs. Where are those coming from? I don't even know. Where is it a pigeon? I have no idea. Could it be? Yes. What I'm worried about too, though, and we were talking about this on the show, and I know I'm being funny here a little bit, with these egg story, but what about the eggs that are coming in? Like, what if they're like chickens in them? Like, are they smuggled? Now we have illegal chickens in our country. We've got all kinds of strange things happening at our border, and we've got to get the eggs now. We've got to get the eggs. We've got to get the chickens. We've got to get I don't even know. I heard something the other day that was, and it might be breaking a story on this, but how they can hide things in different types of products, and it's not just, putting like fentanyl in the wheels of a tire, but I'm talking about like huge trucks filled with like liquids and, they can hide stuff in these liquids. We can't even detect them. I mean, there's all kinds of things going on. Yet still, our border is wide open. If they are smuggling all of this into our country and all these people are getting around the border, doesn't it, or would it even surprise you that an enemy would be able to bring something else into the country? Like, if we're not really protecting our border, what is Al-Qaeda doing? We haven't even heard from them in a long time, right? I guess they're just not hip in the news anymore. But just so you all know, I've been talking to people, that are familiar with this and in the intelligence community. And Al-Qaeda is still growing, still planning attacking, still planning on all this stuff. So here we have this wide open border, right? Not only are we bringing in fentanyl, you heard the horror stories, right? But now we're apparently, eggs are being smuggled into the country, undercutting our ranchers, our farmers. And by the way, highlighting how expensive eggs have gotten. Let me just give you this little last point here. And this comes from Ben Wilson's story. Ben Wilson, everybody go read him at the Washington Free Beacon. The influx of egg smuggling comes as food prices rise 60%, right? We talked about that in 2022. Grade A eggs went from $1.79 for a dozen in December 2021 to $4.25 a year later. And those are those little eggs that I'm talking to you about, the pigeon eggs, right? Not the big, brown eggs that are like, now you get a dozen of those brown eggs. I'm telling you, the large ones, they're like over $6 in some cases even more than that, depending on where you shop. And, there are some places that milk is like $8 a gallon because you're buying organic milk. So, maybe President Biden should be thinking a little bit about the American people, about the security at our border, about the prices in our grocery stores, and about the fact that Americans are struggling to make ends meet. And God help us if we do eventually completely fall into a recession. I already believe we're almost there. Thank you so much for being a part of the Sara Carter Show. Send a letter to your lawmaker. Tell them no more smuggled eggs, no more illegal alien chickens. Let them know that you actually care about your country and that you want to do something about it. I know you do. Subscribe to me on YouTube and follow me on Twitter, guys, at Sara Carter DC, on Instagram at SCarterDC, and on Truth at Sara Carter Official. God bless you. God bless our great nation. God bless our farmers. And God bless the great state of Texas.